All right, so I've done a lot of thinking last night about wide stand squats, and I've been watching a bit more of Louis Simmons, and I decided to come in today and do a whole bunch of wide stand squats. So I'm 3 sets into a whole bunch of sets. I decided to do 100 kilos for 10 sets of 5. I've just finished the 3rd set. But basically, the reason behind me wanting to do this is because, number one, I'm very, very weak at it. And whether you agree with Louis Simmons, type of squat or training philosophy or not, I don't think it's good that I'm so weak in the wide stance squat. I feel a great amount of instability. I literally have no strength out of the parallel portion of the squat in the wide stance. I don't even know what to engage and how to bounce out of the hole and whatnot. I'm just so used to, going ass to grass and having that tactile feel of my calves touching my hamstrings and sort of that rebound happening there. That when I'm kind of suspended in midair, in the parallel squat, wide stance, there's nothing there. I literally have to stop myself going down and then go up. There's no reflex there at all, there's nothing. And I've also been feeling my hip flexors as well, which is really interesting. Kind of as I approach 90 degrees or parallel, I feel like my adductors are on fire. I really feel them working, contracting, and I feel my hip flexors really engage. I'm really conscious of them working as well. So anyway, I'm gonna do this. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to do 170 kilos for my 3 sets of 5. I'll see how I go. But right now, all I want to do is focus on the wide stand squats. That's going to be kind of what I'm doing today. And then tomorrow, I'm thinking of doing some CC squats. So my CC, I'm thinking about doing it this way. I'm thinking about doing wide stand squats, one day. And then the next day I'll do CC squats, kind of as the accessory movements. The only question I have right now, I still haven't decided what to do, is whether I go back to normal squatting after I finished with the wide stance. So anyway, I'll work that out as I go along. I'll still have 7 sets more to go, but I'll show you a few sets, now, and show my struggle of how it's going. All right, let me get the next set. Just getting ready to do set number 6, and it occurred to me that what I'm really doing here is just targeting my weaknesses. It's extremely humbling to have 100 kilos on the bar and for me to be barely doing 5 reps. I feel like there's power there. I feel like I could push through it. It's just the muscles which I'm really good at using are mechanically disadvantaged in this position. I can't even engage them. And so my body's being forced to use muscles which are, I guess, weak on my body. And those muscles are now the primary movers in this squat. So it's humbling. I actually love the feeling of having 100 kilos feel this heavy on my back, especially kind of as I'm in the hole. Usually I don't have a problem in the hole. I can pop out of the hole really easily. It's just that 90-degree kind of knee angle is where I kind of have my sticking point. Well, this bar in the hole is at 90 degrees knee angle. So it's exactly where my weakest point is in my traditional squat. And now this is kind of the hardest point of the squat is not only at 90 degrees, but it's also in the hole. So it's kind of a double whammy. Feels really heavy, feels really awkward. But I can feel my nervous system trying to kind of work out, okay, which muscles do we need to fire? Do we really have to fire the weak ones? So I'm firing the weaker muscles in my hip, which I feel like when I go back to my traditional squatting, I'm gonna feel like a lot stronger, because all of a sudden the weak dudes are also strong, and then all of a sudden it's a party, right? Everyone can kind of like propel the bar forward. So I guess what I'm doing here is targeting my weaknesses, and whenever you can find a weakness like this, with such a vast kind of difference in strength, you gotta hammer it. You have to get after it. You have to hammer it, because it's all about base building. I guess that's the term that's kind of popular right now to use. Louis says that the peak of a pyramid is as tall as its base. So the distance of the base of a pyramid is basically the same as the distance between the bottom and the top of the pyramid. So he always says that in his interviews. It's all about base building. The bigger your base, the higher the peak. So you need to have a strong foundation to have really, really lofty, heights of strength, or whatever the task is. So that's kind of cool to think about it that way. But anyway, let me get this set number 6. The other thing that I'm kind of like mindful of is my spine positioning. In the sense that I don't want any butt wink, and because I feel like I can't get deep in the hole, I feel like I might be running the risk of kind of like butt winking. If butt wink's present, then I have to go a little bit higher. I can't go as low, and I have to kind of address the hip flexors and whatnot. But anyway, I think after this movement I'll do some knee raises just to address the hip flexors, because I feel like my hip flexors are being smashed right now. And you wouldn't want a hip flexor to fail, because that means your hip is going to go, your back is going to go out. Because a lot of people don't understand, or don't think, maybe they know but they don't think about it often, is that your psoas originates from basically your lumbar spine, L1 to L5. I think you might even go into the S1, S2. So it's like a fan muscle that goes from the lumbar spine and it kind of goes through and inserts into the proximal femur. Right, and basically you can see from the insertion and the origin point that if that muscle shortens, you have hip flexion. So that's our primary hip flexor. So if you're squatting and your butt wink is kind of like your pelvis is going to posterior pelvic tilt, the number one place to look at is the psoas. Why isn't the psoas releasing and going with the flow? A lot of the times it's strength. If you can't do hanging knee raises for a set of 10 or set of 20, you might be weak in there. So butt wink is that type of manifestation of I guess weakness and ill preparedness of the psoas. A lot of people like to stretch the psoas. I don't like to stretch the psoas, because a lot of us live sedentary lifestyles, and with sedentary lifestyles comes basically inactivity. Unless you're like a supreme athlete and you're running a lot, and you're like an elite athlete, I don't expect a lot of people to have, overacting psoas muscles. Usually it's the underacting. I'm not an elite athlete. I'm not some supreme athlete at all. So it would be very, very strange for me to have an overacting psoas. A lot of people get this confused. They think that a tight muscle should be stretched. No, in fact, it might be the opposite. A tight muscle is tight because it's weak, and if it was to elongate, I guess through stretching, then it runs the risk of snapping. So it's kind of like the body's response of kind of tightening up and protecting the weak area. Like if somebody kicks you in the gut, you don't do this afterwards. You crunch forward and you double over, right? It's kind of like that principle. Your psoas is weak, that's why it shortens to protect itself. Because if that short muscle was in its natural length, it could run the risk of tearing. So that's why, the mindset should always be a tight muscle is a weak muscle, and it's usually a good approach. So if your hamstring, something that's really notorious on people, is really, really tight alongside the psoas, like I already mentioned, a lot of people go stretch the hamstring, and that's a bad idea. Once again, unless you're a supreme athlete, you're doing some stupid amount of workload, it's probably a weakness thing. And so how do you strengthen a hamstring? Hip hinging, right? Hip extension, so like a deadlift up movement, a reverse hyper, that's a glute ham developer. There's all these machines, Nordic ham curl, anything that kind of like forces the hip into extension, and I guess the knee into extension. So anyways, just something to think about. And so when I look at myself from the back, it's a telling story because I get to see what my pelvis is doing under direct load and under some of these challenging positions. So, and you know me, like if I'm out of position, I ain't doing it. Like I'm not putting myself at risk. All right, so let's see how this feels. This is set number 6. Let me check out how that looked. So I guess what I'm trying to say here with this video is that you got to find your weaknesses and then attack it. We all have our weaknesses regardless of our level. We all have our muscles which are stronger than others. You know, we all have our favorite kind of movements that we love to do, and those movements are generally the movements which we are good at. It is very, very rare you will find somebody love something and be shit at it. If you truly love something, you probably would have spent a lot of time doing it. And if you've spent a lot of time doing it, you're probably good at it. So find your weakness, smash it, attack it, and you'll find your strengths also improve at the same time. So that's what I'm trying to do here. You know, I literally feel like I haven't done anything today in terms of like moved weight or trained. But I recognize this is a major weakness of mine, and so I have to iron this out. This is set number 10. We'll get to it. Smash it, and I'll call that a day. I'm not gonna worry about squatting the 170 times 3. I'll do that tomorrow. So I think one of you guys also mentioned in the previous video, I haven't even responded to that yet, but you guys said, one of you guys said that why don't you do one you know, wide squat one day and then narrow squat the next day. And I think I like that approach. I think I will do that just to see where I can take both lifts. I really got to drag this lift to, you know, somewhere in the vicinity of my conventional squat, so it can't be freaking half. This is not my 1 rep max. I'm sure I can get, I don't know, 130, 140 or something like that, but I'm very unstable and high chance of injury, hip might pop or something like that because my muscles aren't ready to have that load. So anyway, I'm gonna do one more set and that'll be it for today. All right, let's see if I can make this a good one. So plenty of volume for the weaknesses. That's the best way to attack it. 10 sets of 5 is plenty of volume. So there it is, guys. Catch you guys tomorrow. See you.